You're in a dream. Something feels slightly off. Maybe the light is wrong, or a door leads somewhere it shouldn't. And then out of nowhere, a thought arrives that changes everything. Wait, I'm dreaming. For a few seconds, sometimes longer, you're fully awake inside a world your own brain built from scratch, and you know it, and you can steer it. You can fly, or walk through a wall, or just stand there marveling at the fact that none of this is real, and somehow it still looks perfect. Today, we're going to figure out how that's even possible, what has to happen inside a sleeping brain for it to suddenly know it's dreaming, and why this strange, half-awake state turns out to reveal something pretty wild about what consciousness actually is in the first place. One thing before we go on. If you've ever had even a flicker of a moment like that, realizing mid-dream that you're dreaming, even if you woke up seconds later, you already have a working sense of what we're describing. And if this kind of deep dive into the weird architecture of the mind is your thing, subscribing costs nothing and keeps this channel digging. All right, let's go back. Not to last night, about 50,000 years ago. For most of human history, nobody asked why we dream. It just happened, every night, mostly forgotten by morning. But researchers studying the evolutionary side of sleep have a theory that reframes the whole thing, and it comes from a Finnish scientist named Antti Revonsuo. His idea is called threat simulation theory, and it's built on something you can actually test. When you look at what people dream about across cultures, across ages, across history, dreams are not random. They lean hard toward danger. Being chased, falling, losing something you can't afford to lose. Fear shows up in dreams more than any other emotion, with anger a distant second, and that pattern holds up again and again in the research. Revonsuo's argument is that this isn't an accident. Dreaming, in his model, works like a nightly fire drill. Your ancestors lived somewhere genuinely dangerous, and a brain that could quietly rehearse threats while the body stayed safely asleep, practicing the fear response, practicing the escape, practicing the decision-making, would have had a real edge the next time an actual predator or actual danger showed up. The studies backing this even found that children living through real trauma have measurably more threatening dreams than children in safer environments. Almost like the system ramping up its training schedule in response to a more dangerous world outside. So dreaming isn't just your brain doing nothing important while you sleep. It's an ancient rehearsal space, a place built specifically to simulate danger so you'd be ready for it. Which makes what happens in a lucid dream even stranger, because lucid dreaming means stepping into that rehearsal space and suddenly recognizing it as a rehearsal space. You're standing inside the simulation, and some part of your brain reaches up and taps you on the shoulder to say, hey, none of this is real. For most of the 20th century, scientists genuinely doubted lucid dreaming was even a real phenomenon, rather than just people misremembering a moment of waking up. That changed because of a clever workaround involving one of the only body parts that doesn't go offline during REM sleep. During REM, your body's essentially paralyzed, which is actually a safety feature so you don't physically act out what's happening in the dream. But your eye muscles still work. In the late 1970s, a researcher named Hearne and shortly after him Stephen LaBerge figured out they could use that loophole. They trained experienced lucid dreamers to perform a specific deliberate eye movement, left, right, the exact moment they became aware they were dreaming. Because the eyes were still connected to the outside world, that signal showed up clearly on the machines monitoring them in the sleep lab, while every other measurement, brain waves, breathing, muscle tone, confirmed the person was still fully asleep. That was the proof. Lucid dreaming wasn't a false memory of waking up. It was a real, distinct state, verified in real time, from inside actual sleep. Once researchers could reliably signal from inside a lucid dream, they could finally study what was happening in the brain when it occurred. And what they found was strange enough that a researcher named Alan Hobson later called it a hybrid state, something caught between sleeping and waking, wearing pieces of both. Normally, during REM sleep, a region called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex mostly powers down. This is the part of your brain responsible for self-reflection, planning, and knowing that you are in fact you, which is a big part of why ordinary dreams feel so strange and uncritical while they're happening. You can be talking to your childhood dog, who's somehow also your math teacher, and just roll with it because the part of your brain that would normally flag that as nonsense is offline. But in a lucid dream, that region flickers back on. Researchers led by Ursula Voss found that the moment lucidity kicks in, brain activity shifts specifically in the gamma frequency range, right around 40 hertz, concentrated in the frontal areas of the brain. That particular frequency is strongly associated with focused awareness and higher order thought while you're awake. So a lucid dream isn't simply a vivid dream. It's what happens when a piece of your waking, self-aware brain reboots in the middle of a sleeping one, without fully waking you up. There's a common question worth asking here. Have you ever had a lucid dream, even a short one? And if so, what actually tipped you off that something wasn't real? Was it something breaking the rules of physics, or just a feeling that something was quietly off? I want to see which one shows up more in the comments. It gets even more specific than that. Brain imaging studies have found that people who lucid dream frequently, multiple times a week rather than once a year, show measurable structural differences in a region called the frontopolar cortex, an area tied closely to metacognition, which is basically your brain's ability to think about its own thinking. People with more gray matter there tend to be better at noticing, hey, this doesn't add up, both while awake and apparently while asleep. That detail matters because it suggests lucid dreaming isn't some mystical separate ability. It's built on the exact same self-monitoring machinery your brain already uses constantly while you're awake, just usually offline during sleep. The skill that lets you catch yourself making a mistake or notice your own thoughts spiraling is very likely the same skill flickering on inside a dream and going, wait, this is wrong. Which is also, weirdly, why techniques for inducing lucid dreams tend to work by training that exact muscle during the day. One well-studied method has people repeatedly pause during ordinary waking life and ask themselves, am I dreaming right now? Checking their surroundings for anything glitchy or impossible. It feels a little silly at first, but the theory and the data backing it is that you're essentially rehearsing the habit of reality checking so often that it eventually fires automatically inside a dream too, the same way any habit you drill enough during the day starts happening without you deciding to do it. On its own, that technique gets a modest but real success rate, somewhere in 1 in 7 attempts in controlled studies. Researchers have also tested combining it with brief planned wake-ups during the night, time to interrupt REM sleep right when dreaming is heaviest, which noticeably boosts the odds. Stack a mild cognitive enhancer on top of that combination, and some trials have pushed success rates close to 4 in 10 attempts, even among people who had never once had a lucid dream before. None of this is instant or guaranteed, but it does show that lucidity isn't some rare gift a handful of people are simply born with. It's a skill with a fairly clear, trainable mechanism behind it. So here's the twist. This whole rehearsal space that evolution apparently built for practicing fear and danger can, with enough training, be hijacked into something completely different. Once you're lucid inside it, you're not just running from the threat anymore. You can turn around and look directly at it. You can choose to not run at all. Comment question for you. If you could guarantee one lucid dream tonight, would you use it to do something impossible? Flying, breathing underwater, that kind of thing. Or would you use it to actually process something real that's been sitting in your head lately? I'm genuinely curious which one people reach for first. Here's what stays with me about all this. Your brain spends every single night quietly building a fully rendered, fully believable world, complete with physics, faces, memories, emotion, all generated from nothing but stored experience and imagination. Most nights, you never even notice because the part of you that could notice is switched off by design. And then, every so often, for just a few seconds, it flickers on inside the simulation itself. Not enough to wake you up, just enough to let you realize you're standing inside something your own mind built, and that you get to decide what happens next. which maybe says something bigger than just a footnote about sleep. If your brain can construct an entire, convincing reality out of nothing every night, purely from memory and imagination, then the version of reality you're experiencing right now, wide awake, reading this, is also being constructed, filtered, assembled, just with a steadier hand and a live feed from the outside world, helping keep it honest. So maybe the real question isn't whether you'll ever have another lucid dream. It's this: how much of what you call reality, even the waking kind, is actually just a dream your brain has gotten extremely good at keeping accurate?